up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the SUP FM podcast. It's Simon here and we've got a fantastic interview for you this week. We've got Mike Shoreman, who's SUP Connect Man of the Year, and he's a hugely entertaining speaker, now author and business owner. So I challenge you not to be inspired in this really rough 2020 year that we've had by his example and his amazing stoicism, and that absolutely shines out in this episode. But before we start, I'd just like to say a word about our SUP FM SUP safety course. This is something that we put together because we were really concerned about the number of paddlers who were out there without any sort of background in water knowledge and water safety. So we couldn't find anything similar to what we ended up producing, but it's a really comprehensive guide to the water, and we cover all sorts of things from kit to equipment and accessories to planning to conditions, tides, basically the whole gamut of water safety for leisure paddling. And over December, we've got a special code you can use, which is GBPaddle10, and that will give you £10 off the face value of the course, and will also give a £5 contribution to Jordan Wiley and his Great British Paddle. And that's available only during December 2020. And you can check out the course by looking at the show notes, going on to our website at supfm.show, or by checking out any of our social media. So this is what you've all been waiting for. Here is the interview with Mr. Mike Shoreman. Today on SUP FM, I'm delighted to welcome the undisputed SUP Man of 2020, Mike Shoreman. Now, Mike's won the SUP Connect Man of the Year this year, completing a Canadian clean sweep of the top 2 awards alongside previous guest and friend of the show, Maddie LeBlanc. People say when life gives you lemons, then make lemonade, and I can't think of a better example of this than what Mike has shown us. He's crashed with a major neurological illness, which had a catastrophic effect on his physical and mental health. And then he's risen, winning a major public speaking competition, which sent him viral. This was followed by a book, which is available in all good booksellers in the US and Canada and on Kindle in the UK. Mike, welcome to SUP FM.
Hey, Simon. So nice to be joining you today. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, I've just finished and really would recommend your book, Crash and Rise, to anyone who's in need of a lift at the moment, and quite frankly, who doesn't need one. But before we talk about your book and sort of what led up to it, something that we all share, everyone who listens to this podcast, and I guess us as well, is a first experience on a paddleboard. So could you tell us a bit about when you first saw the sport and just a little bit about your first experience?
Yeah. So the first time, so paddleboarding was really taking off I'm from Toronto. So paddleboarding was really taking off about 10 years ago here. And I went out on a date. We did we wanted to go out and do an activity, and I remember just kind of being thrown into the water with very limited instruction. and it was kind of a free-for-all. That day was very choppy in the Toronto harbor. Some days it's beautiful and calm, and some days it's really rough. And I think I spent 40 of the 60 minutes in the water, but I loved it. And part of the fun of paddleboarding is falling and
yeah, exactly.
And getting back up again and then wiping out. So it quickly became a hobby, and I developed this big love for being on the water and being on a board and all that comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a familiar story, I guess, to everyone listening. It somehow grabs you. I had a very similar first experience to you, spent most of the time in the water and the weather wasn't fantastic. And, but it still got its claws into me. But, like many of us, like myself, you went all in for SUP fairly early on and you actually started your own business, didn't you, in Toronto?
So I was inspired by, it was like I had a light bulb moment when I was traveling, where I decided I wanted to turn my hobby into a profession, and I wanted to give people the experience that I kind of wish that I had on my first time. I wanted to, just create this wow thing where people would come out and fall in love with the sport, and yeah, it just became a huge part of my life, and I and I'm yeah I revisit
Yeah.
that chapter in my life a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a spectacular location. I've spent a bit of time in the Toronto area, and you've got planes going overhead. You
Yeah,
obviously got Lake Ontario. That's right, isn't
yeah,
it? And just that fantastic cityscape and parks
yeah.
going down to the water. So that must have been amazing for your clients.
Yeah, no, I definitely focused on. I did a sunset lesson and tour.
Hmm.
So we're very fortunate. We've got the Toronto Islands, which are right across. You take a ferry boat across, and it takes 5 minutes from the city. But my main focus was the sunset lesson and tour, and we would go out, and I'd teach the basics on land, and then we'd go out into the water, and everybody's shaky at first, and everybody's not sure, and a little bit nervous about falling, and then by the end of the lessons, it's the skies changed from blue to pinks and purple and golden, and then the city lights turn on and the planes are going on top of you, and I always included photography as part of the package, so people were going home with pretty wow photos that they would frame, and it was a very special thing. Like I had a lot of people come out who were on first dates, and those people, some of them are still on my social media now, and
Brilliant.
they're engaged or they're married now. And I feel very fortunate that I got to play a very small role in their story. So
Incredible! Oh, that's amazing. I can just imagine it, and it was at that point when you were sort of creating, those photos, that experience when paddles up really became a thing, wasn't it?
yeah, so Paddles Up, yeah, it's something I used to do with my clients, and when, like I said before, when people are first starting out, they're nervous and they're
Mm.
building their confidence slowly. But by the end of my lessons, well, we have the most balance on our boards when the paddles are in the water, right? So,
Yeah.
but by the end of the lessons, I position all of them in a row, and I'd kind of command them like a sergeant, and I'd say paddle up, and they'd all lift their paddles over their heads in like a warrior pose in front of the
Yeah.
skyline, and that was a moment really where they were celebrating their victory of
Hmm.
what they'd accomplished in the last couple hours with me, um, and and it was great to see that transformation happen in such a short time. Um,
Mm. So and obviously paddles up became incredibly significant sort of further along, but we'll sort of get to that, I guess. And, I don't know about you, the experience of instructing people and introducing people to the sport, and particularly in these sort of stunning locations, because I think sort of pretty much anywhere waterborne is
Yeah,
incredible, Toronto particularly, but it does give a whole new thrill,
yeah,
introducing others to the sport, doesn't it?
yeah. No, absolutely.
So, Mike, you built up your business
Yeah.
and it was doing very well, and you were considering moving it to California, and you went and did your footwork out there. You travelled out there, and unfortunately, it was when you came back when things really started to unravel. So, just tell
Mhm.
us a bit about that experience when you just got back from California.
Yeah, so I just returned. I had gone out there to partner with a business out in Laguna Beach, because you can't paddleboard here. Well, I do, but people don't want to paddleboard in the winter in Canada. So I was going to go out there and run retreats, and that was the idea, and we hit it off. And then I came back and I was full of life and very excited, and then it all changed very quickly. So I woke up one morning, and it just started off with a really, really horrific migraine. And I'd never had one before. And my head was just, full of pressure,
Mm,
and it felt like it was exploding. And then it became painful. Um, and then that just progressed. So I was taking, Advil, Tylenol. I was taking, two of each, extra strength at the same time, just to combat it. And then
mhm,
that that the pain just progressed. So I went to a walk-in clinic, and they said, have you done any traveling lately? And I said, yeah, I was in California. And they said, what were you doing in California? And I said, I was surfing, I was paddleboarding. And they said, okay, you just have a water in the ear infection. and
mm,
um, and that makes sense. That totally makes sense. So I went home, and um, but then the pain progressed and other symptoms started to develop. So a couple days later, I decided I was going to go to the emergency room. And while I was driving myself, I felt really dizzy in the car. Um,
mm,
I remember being at a traffic light and thinking, uh, that doesn't seem right. Like the lights don't appear right to me. And when I got to the hospital, they said the same thing. You've got a dirty water in the ear infection. And they sent me home, and it was excruciating. People have said, what this was is comparable to both of your kneecaps being shattered at the same time.
mm. Oh, God.
Um, so so 2 days later, I'm at my mom's house, and I come downstairs, and I knew it was bad when my feet touched the ground when I got out of bed, and
Mm,
um, and I had to hold on to the wall for support. And I came downstairs, and she pushed me in front of the hallway mirror, and my face had collapsed on the right side. Like, all the nerves had dropped, and it looked like I'd had a stroke, and my ear
mm,
was full of blisters.
mhm.
And I was vomiting. It was really bad.
did you get your diagnosis then? I mean, that's incredible. And 2 days after you had been to the hospital, you were still suffering. Can't
Yeah.
imagine what that was like.
Yeah, so we went to the hospital that day, and again they got it wrong. It wasn't until 2 days after that day,
Oh,
so like on the fifth, sixth day of all of this, we we went to the final hospital, and they ran blood work, they did a bunch of tests, and they came back and they said it's a neurological condition called Ramsay Hunt Syndrome, and it's a reactivation of your chicken pox that you get as a kid. And so essentially shingles. But when shingles attacks your eye or your ear, it's classified as this neurological condition, and I lost my sense of balance from it. And they said, I remember speaking with him, and he said, Mike, what do you do for work? And I said, I'm a paddleboarding coach, and his face said everything, and it was devastating. And then the news just got worse as time went on. They said, your paddleboarding's done. It's not a reality. You're not going to fly in planes. You're not going to be able to go near the water. It's going to make you sick. You're not going to be able to go in the car or on long car trips. And at that point, like, I wasn't really walking around. I was needing help walking from the living room to the kitchen. So when they said stuff like it was defeating and it was awful, but honestly, like, I wasn't really up for much at all anyway at the time.
No, I mean you had the initial crash and subsequent crashes as well. But Ramsay Hunt syndrome, it's really rare, isn't it? Or particularly rare for someone in their mid-30s, as you were, to get that development. And it's supposed to be sort of, also something that sort of produces itself in times of stress. And it sounds like you absolutely weren't in that kind of state either.
Yeah. No. So it is activated by extreme stress. So somebody who I eventually found, like, I was very curious. At some point, I said to myself, I need to put a name on this thing because I don't recognize it. And I can't be the only person to have this in the world. So I Googled Ramsay Hunt syndrome and famous people, and I found the founder of P90X is a huge exercise program.
Is that Tony Hawk?
Tony Horton, yeah.
Yeah.
And I found him, and he's we're very friendly now, and he's become a Yoda to my Luke Skywalker. But no, he's been great. But I remember just thinking, like, gosh, like, it could be anybody. Just let me find somebody who I recognize. And I was very lucky that I found him, and that he was very supportive, and very he was very he had been through it a year before, and he was very compassionate and kind, and encouraging. So
I mean that's brilliant. Looking for those individuals, and obviously I've read your book, so kind of know the answer. But the Ramsay Hunt syndrome, that there is a community out there. That there's a big supportive community that support people who are suffering from this condition.
Yeah, no. So yeah, that was one of the other things I did was I found a support group on Facebook, and there are thousands. all around the world, mostly in that group, I would say in Canada, the US, and the UK. But there are people from all kinds of countries who are active in it, who come on and say, different questions or just chat, and they've been a great support for me, and I like to be, a great support for them, and yeah.
Yeah, well, you absolutely are. And, again, I would point people to your book. It's an incredibly inspirational read. And, the title obviously sums it up, as I guess it would, Crash and Rise. So there's two elements to your story there. Well, there's lots of elements, but two major elements. But just to complete the crash bit, I mean, you'd think that you had sort of reached your lowest level really at that point, having suffered from the illness, having a complete reversal of fortune on your business. But you did reach a point where you reached such a low level that was ultimately where you kind of hit bottom, and that was your prompt then, or your opportunity, or with support to start your rise. So just tell us about that lowest point that you experienced.
So I most people would be, in a very short time, my business, my independence, my social life, all but evaporated into thin air. And my life was unrecognizable. I remember standing in the bathroom looking into the mirror, and it was winter. This all happened in January. And I remember looking into the mirror in January and thinking, I don't want to go on like this anymore. I don't have it in me. This thing's exhausting, and I was going through an identity crisis. So I went into this deep depression, and this huge mental health journey, and it led me to go places where I thought that I would never go, and I speak about that at great length in the book. I think people are familiar with the talks that I've given. So when they read the book, they're like, "Whoa!" Like, "Wow!" Wasn't expecting that. But I think where I did go, it's important to share,
Yeah.
and and it kind of makes the story. It's you know
Exactly. I mean, it's the extremes really, and that bit was, obviously I'd followed you and watched your talks and so on, but that was something which I really hadn't realised. But I think um, things got to a certain point where you got to a point where you had to make decisions, and I think in your book you say that the point at which things changed is when you started saying yes rather than no, and
yeah
you started accepting help, albeit the fact that you still realized that you had to do the heavy lifting.
yeah no I think no, there was the definite light bulb moment, and for those who have read the book, that was in the hallway, where it just the light bulb flickered, and I said, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to live like this, and I want to do better, and I want to make the next right decision, because there have been a lot of wrong decisions leading up to this, and that that the first yes I said to myself was listening to other people, and And those people were telling me, you need to go and get some mental health treatment.
Mm.
So that's what I did. And it was very hard. But with mental health, um, yeah, you have to do all the heavy lifting yourself. Like,
Mm.
people can put you on a path, and guide you, but you're the one who has to do the work.
Mm.
Um, and that helped build self-esteem and confidence that was lost, just by doing that. And that, put me on the path to doing my next yes, and all the yeses that came afterwards.
So your first yes, which was, I don't know how long it was after you had hit that sort of that low, and you sort of had the mental health treatment, was an invitation from the SUP community to come and talk about water safety, which is a topic very dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Um, how did that come about, and how did you make the decision to go and do that?
Right. So, as part of my when I was operating the business, and I think this goes for entrepreneurs across the board. I think it is very important to build credibility and expertise. And one of the things that I did when I ran the paddleboarding was I got in touch with the Canadian Safe Boating Council, who ran a education day for the Canadian media. So all the television networks, all of the radio, all of the newspapers, and they do this every May, on the May holiday, the May bank weekend, the May holiday weekend, and then the journalists write about it. And I contacted them and I said, I'm a paddleboarder. This is who I am. And would you be, wanting to? I said, I think I'm going to do something, but would you like to do something together? And they said, well, why don't you just come and be a part of our event, and you'll be the paddleboarder guy, and you'll do paddleboarding water safety.
Mm-hmm.
So I became their paddleboarder guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a lot of coverage, a lot of exposure, which really helped with my business, and it helped accelerate the trajectory of how my business was going very quickly. So I got out of the mental health treatment facility in April,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of April, so just a couple of weeks later, I got this email from them, from the Canadian Safe Boating Council, saying, Mike, we'd love to have you back. It's in 3 or 4 weeks. Should we put you down? And they didn't know, because I hadn't told them
Mm.
anything. I hadn't told them I'd lost my sense of balance. When I got that email, I was still using a walking cane, and things were still pretty rough. So what I decided, and I'd already announced that I was closing the business on all my social media. But I still wanted to be a part of it, because it was very exciting, and I thought it would be good for me, just to go and be
Yeah.
around it. But I thought that this was the time to pass the baton. So I called my friends in the paddleboarding community, my friend Allie, who
Mm-hmm.
lives about an hour outside of Toronto, like north of Toronto, and then my friend Sarah, who lives, west of Toronto, and they both have paddleboarding businesses. And I said, do you want to do it? Because I will say yes to this, but you will be the ones who are doing the demonstrations,
Mm-hmm.
and I will just coordinate it. And they said yes, of course. And And so we all went, and it was a brilliant day, and I'm so happy that I did do that. Because that was the first day, when all the television crews left, the girls said, "Do you want to try getting back on a paddleboard for the first time?" And I was very nervous. And vertigo and dizziness is a big part of my condition, even now. So just being on a paddleboard was a very scary concept. But they said, we'll be here right beside you, and I did. I went. Yeah. So it was a beautiful sunny day, and I felt, I spent 3 minutes sitting down that day on the board, and the second the sun hit my face, I felt like I was at home again. And I describe it as the 3 most satisfying moments of my year that year. It was just one of the best things that it was a huge accomplishment, and I was it was amazing.
That sounds incredible. So it's just about, building momentum so much part of your story on the sort of the rise cycle. And then there was the most incredible next major event, which was an invite. Was it an invite to speak at Speaker Slam? I mean, I can't imagine that, coming from where you were and choosing to do something which most people are absolutely terrified of, which is public speaking, but entering a public speaking event that close to obviously your low point. Just tell us a little bit about the story, because the significance of this for people who don't know, and I can't imagine there's anyone listening who doesn't know, is that your appearance in Speaker Slam was basically, you won the competition, and that's when you started going viral and your story started going viral. So just tell us a bit about that public speaking.
Yeah. So, a couple weeks after that paddleboarding, I went out paddleboarding again, and that 3 minutes became 5 minutes, and 5 minutes became 7 minutes sitting down. And then eventually, I stood up for 1 minute. I remember that very well. But I remember around the time that I had got back on the water for the first time, I was visiting a friend of mine, and she said, "What are we going to do with you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And I was wearing an eye patch to protect my eye because my eye was bulging out because the face collapse. I was holding onto a wall for support. And she said, "You're not done. I know you. You're not done." And I was like, "Yeah, right. I think you've had too much to drink this morning." And she said, "I'm going to send you some information, and I want you to take a look at it." And she sent me information to Speaker Slam, which is Canada's largest inspirational speaking competition. And you have to apply. So I did. And I thought, okay, well, I can probably write a speech, and it will probably be okay. And I'll submit it. So I applied, and then I found out it was 10 people giving inspirational speeches on the theme of courage in front of 300 people. And
Wow.
they came back and they said, "Yes, we want this story. You're in." So then I started doing my research, and I found out that a lot of their speakers had gone viral on several platforms, that they were TED Talk speakers, professionally trained, corporate speakers.
Wow.
And I thought, crap, what have I done? So then I started writing, and I thought I'm going to write this story of what's happened. Not all of what's happened, but
Mm-hmm.
a snapshot of it. And and hopefully it will, I'm going to tie in a universal message,
Mm-hmm.
and make it a little bit funny, make it relatable, and just make it universal, so that it's not just about my condition, that it's about everybody's condition.
Mm.
And and hopefully people will respond well, and maybe 5 people out of 300 will like it.
Well, slightly more than that, I suspect. But carry on.
Yeah. So I talked about paddles up. Um,
Mm.
and I start the speech with painting the picture of what life was like, and how I took great pride in transforming people, and with my lessons, with their power and their confidence, and getting their paddles up to life. And then in the speech I went through, and I talked about how my paddles weren't up at all.
Mm.
And I talked about the illness, and the mental health journey, and then getting back on the board again, and how each yes that I said to myself led to my next yes, until I wasn't saying no anymore.
Mm.
And yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, incredible speech, and again, we're going to link to it in the show notes here if you haven't seen it. But it's fantastic. I've watched it many times, and there's not a wasted word in there. And I mean, were you really prepared for the response? First of all, on the evening, because it sounds like everyone was on their feet, and were you ready for the response afterwards?
It was, so for a person who, like, I was like, my balance is much better now than it was. But I'm affected by noises. Like, I have amplified hearing. Like the roof, if people who were in that room remember that night. It was loud.
Mm.
When I finished, I feel like, looking back at it now, it was a release of everything that I had kept inside of me, and I just
Mm.
let it out,
Mm.
um, like a lion. And I do remember it being very loud. And yeah, that's something that I'll never forget. And then,
Yeah.
um, you know, and then I went home, and I remember I put out the recycling the next morning and put out the garbage. Like it was like it was just such a big contrast. Like, this thing just happened, and then I was like, okay, well, back to normal life. I've got to go and do the dishes now.
Yeah, and it wasn't normal afterwards, because you got picked up by all sorts of sort of inspirational organisation, including Ashton Kutcher and so on.
Yeah.
You it just absolutely went off. So not only did you get people, watching your speech, but and celebrating with you and being inspired by you, but also the whole paddles up took off
Yeah.
all across the world.
Yeah, no. So it started with Ashton Kutcher, actor Ashton Kutcher's platform, A Plus.
Hmm.
My speech went up there, I think, probably a week afterwards. And then the Power of Positivity. I think they've got a community of 35 million. They put up my speech on their platform. They've featured me, a couple times now. I'm actually on there today, with an article that I wrote. And the views just, went off like crazy. And I've had millions of views on my talks now,
Mm.
because of, the generosity of these viral partners and the partnerships that Speaker Slam has with them. And it's become this crazy thing. I've had the great blessing of, when you go viral on a platform, suddenly you get thousands of likes and thousands of, sad faces and angry faces, whatever, because everybody in the world watching, so everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
But the comments were beautiful, and the messages from people, with Parkinson's, with multiple sclerosis, with who have been through cancer, saying, "Wow, paddles up." Like, it just became this really, really amazing thing. And then I going viral caught the attention of the paddleboarding community. And I woke up one day and I went downstairs and I turned on my phone and I'm scrolling through Facebook, and there's this picture from Australia that's been tagged to my Facebook wall, and it says "Paddles Up from Australia. Way to go, Mike
Amazing.
Shoreman." And it's a picture of 10 paddleboarders, and they're raising their paddles in the air. And because it's tagged to my wall, anybody through my network can see that. So within a few hours, there's another picture, and that one's from Maryland in the USA, and one from Boston. And, then there's one from England and one from Italy, and whole paddleboarding clubs. There, people on kayaks, people in canoes. Like, it just became this crazy thing celebrating, me and people who are struggling with mental health and with physical conditions, and celebrating that. And just over, it's been just over a year, and I think it's almost 50 countries now that have done it. Like, there have been, I think we're at 42, which is cracy.
Well, that's amazing. The challenge is out there. We've got a fairly good reach sort of internationally. So let's all continue supporting Paddles Up. I spoke to a guest, Sam Rutt in the UK, and I know Sarah Thornley, Sup Junkie. They're all big fans. So you've got a huge following over here, and very, very inspiring. And of course, what that led to is you're winning the Uber Award for stand-up paddleboarders. So there's a long list of incredibly inspirational people, but you won the Sup Connect Man of the Year award at an absolute canter.
Yeah, no, that's it's all crazy how this has played out. No, it's very it's a big honor, and I remember when they released the nominations of who was nominated this year. I scrolled through like you do. You want to see who else is nominated, and it was me, and it was all these world champions and Pan Am Games winners, and I thought, oh, well, that's really nice. That's really nice of them that they did that. And you don't really, when you're up against like Zane and Casper and all those guys, you just kind of think like, oh, it's really nice that they gave me a nod. And I guess the panel, the people spoke like with the People's Choice Award, and then the panel I wasn't expecting that. Maddie actually found out first.
Mm-hmm.
Maddie LeBlanc, she won SUP Connect Woman of the Year,
Mm-hmm.
and she messaged me in August, and she said we won, and I said we won what? And she said we won, both of us.
Amazing.
It was crazy. It was yeah, it was really really special,
Yeah.
and really nice to be acknowledged in such a way. So
Well, I've got a plan, a secret plan. Maybe I can just share it with you at the moment, to have you and Maddie both on an
oh,
episode, just talking about Canadian paddling. But I haven't asked her, and I haven't asked you, so maybe
oh
we'll have a
well,
chat about that afterwards. But that would be
yeah.
great to get you two together.
Oh no, I would love to be on again, and to no, I love hanging out with Maddie. So yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, I'm sure
Awesome. Hope,
she will be up for that.
I'm sure she will now. The book was published this year. Clearly, I'm a big fan. I've read it through once, and I'm about halfway through it again.
Mm.
It must have taken a huge amount of hard work. I mean, I've written stuff, not a book, but articles and so on, and I know how much time it takes to do that. How did you put that together, and did you get any help on that, or is it just 100% your own work there?
Yeah, no. So the process. So August 2019 was Speaker Slam, and I quickly decided I had no. I had thought I've always enjoyed writing, and when I wrote that speech, I wrote I spent hours and hours and hours writing,
Mm,
and when the response came from all the attention from it, I thought, well, I can reach more people in a book,
mm,
and it can make a bigger difference, I think, and it can really tell the whole story. So I quickly decided that I was going to do the book, and I started writing in end of August of 2019. And I got involved with a publisher, Life to Paper Publishing. They are in Miami,
mm,
and um, mm, and you know, I was still in the writing process in this past spring, and then I finished it, and it got wrapped up, and then Life to Paper um you know
mm,
got brought in the editors,
mm,
and then there was several back and forth with the editor team. We brought in people from who've edited for Reader's Digest, so they've edited
top
millions
people.
millions of words for Reader's Digest. They're amazing.
Mm,
And what I really appreciated was they came back and they said, "Do you want this to be your story, or do you want to leave your voice in it?" Like the question was, do you want to leave your voice in it, or do you want to take it out and it's just your story, but
mm,
people won't hear you? And I had to make the decision. And I decided, no, I want people to feel like they're having a conversation with me,
mm,
or they're sitting on a beach or on a paddleboard with me. And
mm,
and they did. They left it. They changed a lot of what was written. There were several edits back and forth, and so much cut and added. Um, but at the end of it, the response that I've got from people who have read it is that they feel like they're sitting down with me.
mm.
and and I'm goofy a lot, and I make jokes, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they're funny, and some, I'm Mike Shoreman. I make people laugh and cry.
Brilliant.
But no, the whole process kind of wrapped up in late July, early August, and then it launched in mid October,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been just over a month now, and it's been a great launch so far. It's pretty,
Well, it has.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every new post is another retailer picking it up, and
Yeah.
for good reason, and obviously, it's a story that really talks to everyone. Paddleboarding is very niche. Whether I mean, it's obviously getting bigger, but it's very niche. But your story about sort of hitting those lows and the disappointments and how you sort of progressed out of it is just I mean, it's a universal story and hugely inspiring, and I think that's why it's had so much support internationally. That whole positive thing is something which is so important. So I would certainly appeal to anyone listening to this. It's just a fantastically inspirational read, and I would highly recommend it.
Oh, thanks, Simon. Thank you. No, I think right now with all that's going on, people are looking for stories and for messages and for positivity anywhere they can find it, really. I love hearing from people, how it's touched them, how it's motivated them, especially now. And yeah, no, it's been an exciting beginning to this new journey.
Fantastic, and obviously it's given rise to new opportunities and so on. I know you're doing some stuff around building momentum, helping entrepreneurs, and you've got various initiatives. Just tell me a bit about what you've got planned for the new year, because you've got a coaching program, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm working with entrepreneurs. When I won my speech, one of the things that I have managed to do is hold interest and build this momentum. A lot of people who do Speaker Slam, they do it with a product or a service, and then they do this big speech, and I didn't have that, which is why I think it was received so well, because I wasn't selling anything. But one of the things that I did do well was, I was able to, I got a lot of attention. And I built this movement, and I kept on putting out content and inspiring it to keep on going, and that led to where I am now. Going into the book, there was so much momentum. So I am working with several life coaches and small businesses and nonprofits, starting in January, teaching them how to build their own momentum going into a product launch or the launch of a service. And teaching, like last year, I did 3 TV interviews. I've had 4 published articles. I've done magazine interviews. I've done podcasts, and all of that has built up credibility, but it's also kept the story alive. And I want to teach that to other people so that they can do it, because it's really valuable. And so I'm doing that starting in January. I am doing a crossing from New York to Toronto, which is 85 kilometers, inspired by Chris Burdish, who is the big crosser. But but 85 kilometers for me will realistically probably take 2 days. I will have to do a lot of it sitting down, some of it in the dark. I'm an advocate and ambassador for jack.org, which is a mental health organization in Canada. And they are putting together the website, and they'll be releasing it in January. So I'm planning to do that crossing to raise, awareness and funds for mental health, and then I have some, there's speaking engagements and all that good stuff, and then I've got just regular paddleboarding.
Well, you got regular paddleboarding. I don't know whether we can talk about this. We can always cut it out if we can't. But you're well known as a snappy dresser, and you've got some apparel coming out. You're doing a partnership with California Cowboy.
Yes, yeah. So one of the amazing things that has come from all of this is California Cowboy is an apparel company based in San Diego. They heard my story and they loved it. They are a new company in the last couple of years. They've been featured in Men's Health Journal, in the New York Times. And they heard my story and they said, Mike, we want to outfit you. We want to, which is great. Crazy. I was like, yeah, okay, send me some free clothes. Like, great, a new wardrobe. So I wear California Cowboy. They're an après ski and surf company. And the launch of the new Crash and Rise shirt by California Cowboy will be happening this February. But that is,
Well, it's exciting.
Another crazy thing. So
good stuff. Well, I think we've kind of followed the formula more or less all the way through, but I got a range of some rather random questions here for you, Mike. So one comes from a previous guest of mine who I told that I was talking to you, and she said, you must talk to Mike about butter tarts. It's a level of fuel that Canadian paddlers have access to, which really help. Is this something that's important to you?
It is like air. It is very, very important. It is, so a butter tart is like, you'll have an international following, so they'll have no idea. It is comparable to a pecan pie. And it is just sugar. Like, it's just such a contrast to paddleboarding. But yeah, no, it's just like this beautiful tart. And there's butter tart filled with like gooey filling, and you can put raisins, you can put pecans, you can just have them plain. But they were created in Canada, and there are actual butter tart festivals.
Really?
Yeah, like, it's crazy. You can get them gluten free, you can get them vegan. Actually, gluten free ones are pretty good. But you can get gourmet ones with chocolate, with bacon.
Bacon? Yeah. Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So, wow, this is incredible. So this is, you're right. It's something new to us, but clearly the secret of Canadian success this year.
Yeah, if you want to, you can. It's much easier to do butter tart squares. So if you have like a 9x9 baking pan, you can actually just Google butter tart squares recipe. When I was living abroad in England, I was working at Jamie Oliver, and for Christmas one year, I built like imagine like you're moving and you've got these big boxes. I brought in 3 big moving boxes full of them into Jamie Oliver, and they just went wild. Like they said, like, you need a stall at a Christmas market with these things.
Wow.
But yeah, no, you should definitely check it out.
So the other thing to mention, and this was I think before you started your company, about your great love for India, and one of the surprises that we've had, with our listenership is the amount of listeners that we have in India. I know you spent a bit of time traveling around there, and it's a country that you absolutely love.
I love India. No, so I've been to India twice. Once with paddle boards, and once, I actually start my book in India, and I talk about what it was like for me going through India. But no, I fell in love with India. I went there to have my eat, pray, love experience, and I fell in love with the culture, and at some points I found it challenging. I found it hard, hard to watch life sometimes, but at other times it was beautiful.
Mm,
And every place that I went was different. In the northern regions, in Rajasthan, in Kerala, in Goa, all different. The food, the way that people dress, the dialects of the language,
mm,
but the people themselves, that wasn't different. People are people, and I experienced great kindness, and I loved my time in India very much.
So we're kind of drawing to a close now. It's been a fantastic chat, and you've proved just as inspirational in person, or as a virtual person, as you are on the page and in your speech. There's a lot of listeners here who be big fans of yours and have voted for you and love the work that you do. Is there anything that you'd like to say, directly to them?
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you so much for all of your support, and it has meant the world to me. Um, you know, I it just goes to show how strong the power of community is, and
Mm,
what can be done. I have transformed because of this community, and I think I have become a much you know I've become a better person because of what I went through, and I've become a better person because of what the paddleboarding community has done for me. And I hope that we keep doing that for people, because it changes lives. And,
mm,
and it's not just about our love for the water. It's about supporting people in our community. And there are people in our community who are championing great causes. Piper's Angels, Sup Junkie.
mm,
People are amazing in this
mm,
community, and we should embrace them and support them as best as we can. And
mm, mm.
and thank you all for being who you are, and championing me.
Well, as far as I can speak for the rest of the SUP community, I'd probably say in short form, straight back at you, Mike. But your story has been incredibly inspirational. As I said, not just to the paddleboarding community, although I think it is a special community and particularly supportive, but
Yeah.
and to the wider population of people suffering from conditions and people going through various hardships at the moment of various different types, and mental health as well as physical conditions. So, I'd like to be presumptuous and thank you very much on behalf of everyone out there. Now, this is a bit of a daft question, really, but where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social medias. My Instagram is at the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. I am on Facebook. My page is Mike Shoreman dash the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at mikeshoreman.com. And then the speeches are on YouTube, and the book is, in most major retailers. If they don't carry it, it is now set up that they can order it. So in shops pretty much around the world are set up, even if they're out of stock or they don't carry it. And yeah, that is how people can find me.
Excellent. I don't think they'll miss you, Mike. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been the interview that I'd hoped for. Thanks so much for your time. And, we'll continue to watch from afar and support your efforts as you go on to your next new challenges. Thank you ever so much for spending time with us.
No, thank you for SUP FM is amazing, and what you do and interviewing people in this amazing sport. So thank you so much for having me, Simon. It was an honor and a lot of fun.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the water.